Hi everyone, I'm Nancy France-Vaz. Welcome to my studio today. I hope you're all staying safe at this crazy time in life. As promised, two-part video on my last painting. Last month I finished it, finally, called Life Path. What I would be doing today is the technical, the concept, and how I take it to the technical, and part two would be what colors I mixed, what materials I used, so stay tuned for that one. So how did I think of this painting? I've been working on a series called Bohemian Spirits and Mysticism. And what that's about is what I think about all the time. Chatter in the head, law of attraction, the past, the present, the future. How do you stay present? Well, the patterns that I use in my recent paintings are really intentional. They're not done for decorative, like some people think. They're not. What they're about is the past, the present, the future. In that moment, that we're reflection, that thought, that moment in time, what are we thinking about? What is it about? Are you thinking of something that is in your past that you never got over? Is it something you're wishing for, reflecting about? Or is it something where you want to go? And we all experience that. It all came about when I did a painting of my sister called Peace Within a few years ago. And she's this light spirit. I absolutely love her energy. She has such a soft voice that sounds like a 5-year-old. And I just absolutely had to paint her. And the background had these very pastel colors. And that's my sister Joanne. She's just this light pastel kind of girl since we were kids. So after that painting, I started to think about a time, what happened to me in my life. I was going through a tough time a few years ago, and I started to think of stories that I can create out of that using other models. Most of my models are artists. Why do I do that? Well, coming from an acting dance background, I do have a lot of friends that are professional artists, so I use them. And a lot of times they do it for free. I don't pay them, and I always give them a print of the painting, or I send them the photo because I shoot professionally as well. In this instance, this model is a singer-songwriter named Emily Grove. I met her one night when I went out with my husband, and he said, wait till you hear her sing. She's going to do Joni Mitchell songs and Karen Carpenter and the like. And I just fell in love with her voice, but more importantly, her spirit. She had this amazing ethereal spirit. And now I just kind of tag myself ethereal portraits. I just love that feeling. In such a crazy world, we want to feel calm. We want to feel hope. I don't want to see ugly, angry things. If that's somebody's story, well, that's great. I want to show hope, light, passion, a moment of humanity. So Emily was perfect for this because she has so much depth to her when you speak to her. When she came to my studio here, all my walls are a middle gray, so I don't have to use an exposure card or a light meter or any of that. I had her come in. I have east light coming in, and so I used the available light, and I took a Genere 800 bicolor light, and I just changed the Kelvin degrees to a cooler temperature so that the warm and the cool would neutralize and balance out. In post, I can change that to whatever I want. But in this instance, I had a photo of the woods that I shot when I lived in Atlantic Highlands. There was woods called Hartshorn Woods. I went into the woods in the morning, very early when the sun came up, and in the evening before the sun went down. And I shot this. And I always wanted to paint it, but I needed a figure in it. And all of a sudden, I thought of it. I'm like, this would be perfect after I did the photo shoot of Emily. When she came in, she had a couple of suitcases of clothes. And we picked this outfit because I wanted the concept to be the color of red and green. Go, stop. So what's the story about? I'm very well read. I studied acting in Stanislavski, the actor's studio method, where you become someone, you follow somebody around and you emulate them to become them. And when I do portraits, I actually do that, especially if they're posthumous portraits. I have to make them human presence. It's very important to me, probably from that background. And so with Emily, she was so great at taking direction, and I directed her in a story, Life Path, which is where someone goes into the woods. Think Dante's Inferno. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. That's exactly what I was thinking. We go into the woods. It's a journey. Our life journey is a path in the woods, and we don't know if we get lost. Do we turn left? Do we turn right? Is there a sign? How do we get out of here? Especially if the sun is going down, the darkness. Nobody wants to be in the dark. Well, life is like that. Sometimes we make a good decision. Sometimes we don't make a good decision, but we hope that we learn from that, because you don't want to repeat the past. You're repeating the loop, as my friend Ted would say, law of attraction. Stay in the present. So in this, I put Emily into this background. From the beginning, I was thinking of that lighting, and I had to match the lighting for this. She's in the woods and she doesn't know. Do I go left? Do I go right? And she gave me this great pose that she was off balance. That's what it's about. Life is off balance. Which way do we go? The birds, I'll step over here. The birds in this tie into a book by Hermann Hesse called Siddhartha. If you don't know that book, it's how Buddha came about. So the songbird. The songbird was in a cage that his wife Kamala had, and when Siddhartha went out to find the higher being of life, he was dying. When he accumulated as much knowledge as he can, he was dying by the lake. And so Kamala got the bird that was dying without the master, and he flew out of the cave to be with the master. Well, in Dante's Inferno and C.S. Lewis, The Great Divorce, the same thing. There's a guide. A lot of the classical books, they always have a guide, and the guide is a poet. So in Dante's Inferno, the guide was Virgil, who wrote the Aeneid. In this one, it's Siddhartha's bird, the songbird. That's her guide that's trying to guide her. Notice the bird is lit. There's a counter bird back here on the other side. They're purposely put left to right. Why? Left and right in life. If you think about back in the day, the left hand wasn't the good way to go. They changed it over to the right hand. An angel comes in over your right shoulder, and she or he is giving you energy. If the angel comes in over your left shoulder, they zap your energy. So think of the anatomy of hell, the good and the evil, the dark and the light. So the two birds act as spirits, angels, whatever you want to call them. There is no religious ordained attachment to this. It's a spiritual meaning about someone that gets lost in the woods and doesn't know which way to go. And there's a bird that's negative, because that's what happens. Fear creates negativity. And then you need somebody light saying, no, don't listen to that. This is the way to go. In this painting, there's this red swirling motion. When I first drew this out, and I always start with a drawing because I want to work out the values and the anatomical structure of things. I started the drawing just to get a feeling of what it was going to look like. It's kind of glary in here. I don't have a video guide because we have to do social distancing, so bear with me. So this is the drawing that I created. What I did after that, when I was happy with it, is I transferred it to this canvas because it's large. If something is 30 inches or less, I do not transfer at all. I just do it like I'm painting it from life, and you know, straight lines, and I get my halfway down and my halfway this way, which I'll be explaining in the next video. But I had to get it just right so that it would fit in this format. So that's what I did with that. And once I had that, it was up on the canvas, and even after the drawing, it just seems so static, and the story is all about which way do I go. It had to have some sort of movement, some tornado, some hurricane of life. So I thought of getting copper and gold leaf, and I took a chance. I started on a white panel, and I just placed them in the right spot to start from the trees, and then it kind of infiltrates into her. It's in front of her and it goes out in the position of where the hand is. And that was so important to the story, because without that movement, it would just be a static, pretty painting, and you wouldn't try to figure out what I was trying to say in the whole story. So that's what that is about. Usually when I first start my story, I write it down. I have a sketchbook of all my ideas, and for a lot of people, they can paint and the painting just evolves. I don't do that. It comes from a feeling, and lately everything is about my thoughts. It's about the past. It's about, sometimes I wish it would go back when I was a little kid in the 70s and the 80s. I wish it would go back to that time. But life changes and nothing goes back. And what do we take from it? Patterns. Patterns that weave in and out of our life, which is why I love using patterns. In this one, I didn't really do a pattern. I just used this abstraction here, but I did have a bird on the neck to maybe suggest she's becoming part of the birds, flying, being okay with things, being okay, being ungrounded, whatever your interpretation, whatever you want it to be, that's exactly how I thought of it. I start with a Sony a7 III camera, and I use Genere lights. I always shoot on a gray background because it gives me the exposure that I want, but sometimes not. Sometimes I go on location, but I always have an off-camera flash, because you can't go, if it's sunny out, it's too contrasty, and you can't get the fill shadows in to get that soft, non-raccoon eyes when you're shooting. So I always start like that. I do paint from life a lot, so I have the model come to my studio. Sometimes they'll sit for me because I want to get a sense of who they are when they're sitting for me, and I use a lot of my imagination, photo reference, and I alter a lot that way. So they're imaginative in story, and then I kind of make up sometimes backgrounds that I hope will pull together as a whole. After I do the photo shoot, I then take, I don't know, sometimes I have 200 shots of all different angles, and the one that I, pick is probably one of maybe only 3 that came out good, that give me what I'm looking for in my story. I bring it into Photoshop and I work in a lot of layers, and sometimes that could take me a few weeks to do with the layers, with compositing. Coming from the computer art background, I was a 3D animator, and we always were putting models in an environment. So I use that information that I got and that ability, which I think is really important. I think it's great to paint from life and be a purist and all of that, and nothing wrong with that. I love Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and Caravaggio and company, but I think that if they were born today, they would use the new tools of today. So I do use the technical tools, and I'm happy that I did have that background for 4 years. So good for me. So I hope some of you have adapted to that, because you can get so much more when you shoot and you go on location. And sometimes I shoot an environment and I say, wow, that would be a great background for my portrait, especially in narrative work. And then with that, you can then use your imagination and do imaginative stuff. So that's what I do. Once I get the Photoshop image down and I'm really happy with it, I save a few copies to different hard drives just in case I lose one. I print it out on a printer, poster size, life size, because then what I do is I put it up against the panel to see if it really looks good. I don't have a projector. I'm thinking of getting one. I don't like them. I'm not one to project images or any of that, but I think in a way it's good if you can project it onto the canvas or an area on a wall and see, does it look better bigger? Does it look better smaller? What I do is I get my images, I go to Kinko's, I blow them up all different sizes. And then I decide on, should I crop it here? Should I make it this size or not? And that's what usually drives me, is what will the design look like to drive the story? And it's really important. As a 3D animator, one of the things we do is we work from a script. Like film people, you work from a literal, and the DP has to then create the lighting and the shots. I am so used to working that way that I can't just let things evolve. Maybe once in a while I do that, but I'm very driven by the story. I guess from coming from that background, it's just part of my nature. It's inborn. I've done it other ways too, but that's the best way I like to work. So if you like this video, please leave a comment below. If you have any questions that you would like to ask me on what equipment I use or some of my technical process, please leave a comment or direct message me. And I'll see you on the next video. Stay safe, everybody. Peace out.